Welcome back, everyone, to Issues of Faith. I am speaking with author Mallory Wychoff. She is the author of God Is. It's a book that kind of broadens our view of God in a way, seeks to broaden our view of God. And I asked as we were going to break, you know, in the Bible it says God the Father, you know, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Do you get pushback? And what sort of pushback have you gotten when you say, well, God is Mother and God is all of these things? It's much broader than God the Father. Do you get pushback?
Absolutely. and it comes at different levels and in different ways and for different reasons. So for some folks, and you know, it's happening sometimes at very conscious, overt, clear levels, and oftentimes much more subconscious and subtle and covert, but nonetheless powerful ways as well. For some folks, it's if our image of God is no longer what we image God to be as a white male, that's necessarily going to change certain structures of power and systems, religious and political and otherwise. Therefore, don't mess with that, right? Don't mess with this image, because now you are reaching into other conversations as well, right? And that's my point in the book. This has impact for everything that we're talking about, the ways we order our lives, the ways we order the world. So for some people, it's just, we don't go there, do not mess with the status quo. We like the way things are. Plenty of people don't, right? But for some, particularly with a strong grip on power, if the system's working to their benefit, they don't want to change that. So I do get certainly some pushback at that level. I would say for a lot of people, where the pushback comes is more of a sense of discomfort, because there's often a sense that if you are poking at this way I've come to understand and maybe even meaningfully understand God, then you're changing my experience of God. And what I keep wanting to tell people is that our experience of God, our perception of God, what we believe to be true about God is not the same thing as God. Often we conflate those two. So if you begin to address or interrogate one, they assume you're interrogating and poking at and even diminishing the other. That's not the case. God ultimately is mystery, right? We're speaking about the ineffable, about this reality we cannot fully know and never will. May that never prevent us from trying, though, right? Because there's such beauty in engaging this mystery. So in helping people, I think, just get a little bit of distance between those two, between what they believe about God and what God actually is, right? God's own essence, gives them a little bit of freedom to go, okay, I can still believe that God is present, that God is real and active in my life and in the world, and the lens through which I view that God, maybe I could change. Maybe I could try a different one, right? Maybe I could take the gem and just turn it and see it in a different light. Still the same gem, but going, oh, there's more to see here, right, than I ever thought to believe, knew to believe, or was given permission to believe. So oftentimes it's just some of that permission giving that not everyone, but I do find a lot of people find really helpful and ultimately can help them move past some of those earlier objections and concerns.
And I saw you wrote earlier, before you wrote the book, those who claim this cause as seeking to divide our churches. And you're talking about women, the role of women and that kind of thing. What do you say if somebody were to say, well, this is a little divisive and I don't want to get into that. You know, it's clearly in the Bible and we're just going to stick with that.
Yeah, I have had plenty of people tell me that my work, even my calling to preach, to teach in these religious spaces means I have an agenda. And it's just funny to me that those who would say that assume that they don't as well. Because when you are maintaining a certain status quo, it gets to be assumed as the default, right? And it's just, this is just the way things are, we don't question it. If anyone wants to deviate from that or see something different, they're necessarily the ones with some sort of agenda, right? But the reality is, if you want things to stay the same, that is an agenda, right? That is a pursuit of a particular reality. And what I'm seeking to say is that system is, I think, actually damaging to all human beings, whether or not you see yourself reflected in that white male God or not. It's actually limiting and harmful for all of us, but it is inordinately impacting those who are not reflected in that image. So women like me, people of color, people who are differently abled, etc. And so what I want to say is, I think we're being invited to create much more generous and hospitable systems where all human beings are reflected in the divine, where we believe that to be true as we interact with with one another, and we order systems in such a way that enable everyone to thrive and to flourish, not just one group that gets to be prized and prioritized. Again, that's meddling with a whole lot of things as they are, but I don't know another way forward other than to continue to say yes to that invitation and seek to extend it to others.
And so it's a bigger tent is what you're talking about. Is that right? Is that kind of what you feel like? I mean, we've talked on this show about churches struggling to maintain membership, certainly get young membership, that kind of thing. Is this something you hear young people talking about? Do you think this can help with some of that? And not compromise the essence. I don't think you're trying to compromise the essence of what religion and Christianity is about, right? I mean, you're trying to broaden it, as I see it. Is that, am I seeing that the right way, or what do you say? Yeah,
I mean, I'm certainly employing the Christian tradition here, right? It's the one in which I am most formed, right? And have come to understand who God is and understand myself and the world around me. That is my tradition. And so I'm not seeking to deviate from that. I'm seeking to say that we have unnecessarily put up blinders around ourselves and our tradition and our faith that has said, you know, this is the one way we get to think about everything, really. And instead I'm just saying, oh no, there's so much more. There's a wide open field here in which we're being invited to explore and to play and to seek and to understand and to find that as our sense of God, of faith, of even Christianity is expanding, so are we.
And where do you see that going in the next generation, 10, 20 years from now? Are there a lot of people that are agreeing with you, and where is this going in your opinion?
Yeah, I have a lot of hope when I think about this conversation, because I look even in just the last few years and these really hard-fought-won changes by so many people who continue to say the systems that we've erected are harming to so many people and certain groups in particular. And so we see these justice movements, we see these efforts of liberation for all of us. And so what I want to do with this conversation is to say, I think there needs to be a coordinating theological effort as well, to say, as we're seeking to broaden the ways that we think about one another, who has value, who has worth, who has dignity, right, who gets access to power and agency and so forth, that I think that what can actually support and enable and empower that conversation that's already happening to continue and to expand is the need for a coordinating theological effort for those for whom that is an essential part of why they want to see that type of flourishing for everybody, right? But to see, oh, actually, I'm seeing this isn't separate from faith, this isn't separate from spirituality for me, but actually my engagement with this abundant God, this is one who reflects the diversity, that's actually part of and a motivating force for these justice movements and efforts.
A coordinating theological movement, is that what you said? A coordinating, and that means, define that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so as people are working to kind of cast off some of the restraints around themselves and their neighbors that are inhibiting folks from being able to flourish, right? Then folks would also then have this coordinating theological effort to say, we also want to do the same to cast off the restraints that we have placed around our theological imagination, the restraints we have placed around our understandings of the divine. Because if I can see my neighbor reflected in the divine, I'm much better able to honor them well, right? To see the dignity that's inherent to them, and therefore then be angry if they don't have access to basic services, right? Or their safety is in question. That's a lot harder to do when God is only reflected in one particular image and by one particular group of people.
What is some scripture that is meaningful to you in this sort of broader context? Because so many people would go back to, something involving God the Father and that kind of thing. What's something that's been meaningful to you that takes it in a broader context?
There's so many. Certainly, the writers and editors of these sacred texts are steeped in patriarchal traditions. That's not going to change. That's part of the social location of the text. They had theirs, and we have ours. We have these factors that inform and influence how we come to even understand this text, let alone everything else. And so, you know, that's true for these sacred texts. At the same time, you see these beautiful glimpses of, in particular, some really feminine images for the for the divine, and feminine language and imagery. And so, you know, I think of several texts in Isaiah where God is compared to a nursing mother. How could I ever forget you, my people? In the way that a mother could not forget this infant nursing at her breast, I too am unable to forget you, right? To even though these people are so scared and afraid, certainly God is neglecting us. We don't sense God, and then you have this image of a mother nursing a little one, and there's nothing more precious and intimate than that. Those sorts of maternal and feminine images are so powerful for me.
That's great. All right, I wish we could talk longer. Mallory Wychoff, thank you for coming on. Thanks for watching Issues of Faith. Have a great day, everybody.